Okay, it seems that now we can start. So, hello everyone. Thank you for attending this webinar, which will give you an overview of performing an ISO internal audit. My name is Carlos Pereira da Cruz, and I'm an author at 𝗪𝗲𝗏. I do quite a lot of ISO 9001 and ISO 14001 consulting and training, but also auditing as lead auditor. So today I'm going to share with you my thoughts about internal audits. My presentation will last approximately 40 minutes, after which we'll do the 20-minute question and answer session. So we received more than 50 questions before this webinar. I'll answer some during the presentation and prepare some extra slides for the Q&A, okay? So if you would like to ask a question, you don't have to wait for the Q&A session. You can ask it during my presentation, okay? Of course, in the Q&A session, I'll also answer all of your remaining questions. So internal audits are a very important tool to monitor a management system performance. The webinar will cover the fundamentals of internal audits, so the process, the documents, and the auditors. And this webinar is tailored for professionals responsible for management systems and particularly internal auditors. So now let's see our agenda for today. So we'll discuss the following topics. First, we will discuss the audit program and see internal audits as part of a process. Everything starts when you, the auditor, receive an assignment. So no audit should be performed without a checklist. That's the next topic. Then comes the agenda or the audit plan or the audit schedule. And then we will speak about the execution or performing the audit and the audit report. And after the audit, you must do the follow-up, one for each audit and another at the completion of the program. And at the end, we'll present the main challenges of the internal audits according to questions received by email before this webinar. So let's go. So first, a program and a process. So the cornerstone of your audit process is the audit program. So this program, which schedules all audits and their scopes over a specific period of time, is crucial for certifying your management system. It is a mandatory document concerning the ISO standards. So it's important to note that auditing all clauses of the standard and all parts within the scope of your management system every year is not an ISO requirement, but a requirement from your certification body. It's in the contract with your certification body. So when designing your program, it's essential to consider your reality and the capabilities of your internal auditors. So more experienced auditors can handle audits with wider scopes, so bigger audits, allowing for fewer audits throughout the year. Conversely, if you have less experienced auditors, it's advisable to conduct more audits with smaller scopes spread throughout the year. Okay? Remember, you don't necessarily audit all ISO clauses when you're auditing a part of the management system. Then, for each audit in your audit program, there is a process to follow. So you need to prepare or plan the audit. So are you going to audit alone or with a team? Who will audit what? Study the documentation, prepare a checklist, and prepare and send an audit agenda or audit plan to inform and get the auditee's agreement. After that, it's time to perform the audit. So collect evidence through observation, interviews, census, documents, and records that help you fill the checklist. After performing the audit, you need to report the audit. So write a report based on the gathered evidence that transmits your conclusions after the audit. One of the most critical aspects of the audit process is the management's role in acting upon any non-conformities identified. This includes developing corrections and corrective actions, implementing those actions, and checking their effectiveness. So this proactive approach is key to ensuring that the audit process leads to tangible improvements in the management system. Now, all these steps, So prepare, perform, report, and follow up the audit. All these steps should be repeated for every audit of the audit program. After performing and closing all audits, the audit manager should conduct a global evaluation and develop a revised audit program for the next year, for the next audit cycle, based on performance and areas deserving closer monitoring. A good practice is to audit more frequently those processes and areas that add more non-conformities or higher risks. Okay? Now, I will leave here links for 3 articles that you can check later. So one of the first article is how to perform an internal audit using ISO 1911. Okay. The other one is 5 main steps in the ISO 13485 internal audit. And the other one is 5 main steps in the ISO 9001 internal audit. Okay. Now, so let's focus our attention in the audit program. So align the audit program with business goals, compliance requirements, like the ISO 9001, 27001, 13485, and risk areas. So start by determining the scope of the audit, so the borders of your audits, okay? So you can use clauses, processes, departments, locations, or a mix. What is important is auditing your complete management system in 1 year. My advice is use to identify the scope things that auditees can understand. So many auditees they don't know what's the meaning of the number of the clauses. But if you put there the processes or departments or topics or locations, yeah, it's much more useful. Okay, so prioritize audits based on risk assessments. So use a risk-based approach to focus on critical processes. Consider regulatory importance and previous audit performance. So audit critical assets and high-risk areas more frequently. So while less critical areas might be audited once every year, the others, if possible, audit more frequently. So both comprehensive audits of the entire system and target mini audits of specific processes are effective. Now, the choice depends on the organization's specific needs and resources. So yeah, about your how many auditors and their experience. So internal audit frequency and scope will depend on the number of internal audits and their experience. Also on the process criticality and risk. Also in previous audit findings. So more audits if major issues were found, or also based on regulatory requirements and business needs and changes. The primary purpose of an audit program is to organize your resources and ensure you comply with audit criteria. So you can also use it to check the status of an internal audit. So you may transform your audit program in a kind of also a record, okay? Because you can put a symbol like this and say, okay, March audit was done. And that symbol means was done. And January audit was done and is already closed. Okay, so you can see here what is planned, what was already done, what is waiting to be closed. Okay, the audit was done, but we need to close the non-conformities. So please consider these links for future reference. So ISO 45001 document template, so annual program of internal audits for 45001. And this article, what is the ISO 9001 audit program and how does it work? Okay, now we have a question from Sakala. Sakala, I think it's like this. Sakala asked, how often should the internal audit be conducted? Okay, internal audit should be conducted at planned intervals and should be based on the status, importance, and risk of the processes. So in practice, typically once per year for each process or area is common. Again, higher risk or problem-prone areas may need more frequent audits, okay? Now, another topic that he had a lot of questions, qualification of auditors. And I'm already seeing here questions about the impartiality of auditors. I will have answers for that during the Q&A. Okay, so many of you have asked if there are any limitations to being an internal auditor. So if anyone can be an internal auditor and if they need experience, if training is required. Okay, so the topic here is, it is up to your organization, it's your organization that has the authority to determine what are the qualifications for being an internal auditor. Okay, so we have generic qualifications, so things like, okay, an auditor must know good auditing practices, okay, basic, must know the standard or standards, okay, also makes sense, basic. Now, so companies can establish these generic qualifications and can also establish specific requirements, okay? You see there, authority to set specific requirements. So do they want auditors with a particular course done by a particular organization? Do they accept in-house training? Do they require a certain number of hours as minimum? Do they need, do they require a minimum of experience? So, for example, at least 3 audits as observers before being full auditors or full internal auditors? Or do they accept that watching a video or reading a book, okay, plus an exam performed in-house is enough? Okay, so it's up to your organization to decide that, okay? Not the auditor, not the certification body auditor. One crucial requirement is that auditors should refrain from auditing their own work, okay? So, Susie, we'll speak about that later, okay? So this is not because, so when we say auditors should refrain from auditing their own work, this is not because of any inherent dishonesty, okay, but rather to prevent the oversight of systemic errors, okay? So when we are part of a system, we often become blind to its flaws, okay, as they are already ingrained in the design. Just as we may no longer notice the cobwebs in our office, we may overlook systemic errors in our work. That's why we should refrain from auditing our own work. Well, some organizations for each internal audit designate a lead auditor, typically someone with more experience, to coordinate the audit team and serve as the communication channel with the auditees. So it's important to remember that learning to ride a bike isn't achieved by reading a book or watching a movie, okay? Similarly, becoming an effective internal auditor requires practice and guidance. So a classroom-trained auditor may feel intimidated when auditing a superior, or may misuse auditing to settle old scores, seen that, or blame individuals instead of identifying systemic issues. This is where the lead auditor plays a crucial role, helping to calibrate the next generation of internal auditors and ensuring a systematic approach to auditing. Okay. Now, I leave here links to 3 articles. What competence should an ISO 14001 internal auditor have? Qualifications for an ISO 27001 internal auditor, and how to perform an ISO 9001 audit of top management without fear. Okay. Now, let me see. Let me show you here this. Oops. Okay, so this. So if you're considering a career, okay, yeah, if you're considering a career as an internal auditor or simply want to expand your knowledge, �11𝗲𝗲's internal auditor courses are an excellent resource. They provide a comprehensive insights into the field, equipping you with the necessary skills and knowledge. Let me show you a glimpse of what these courses offer. Okay, so we have here DORA internal auditor, 9001, 27001, 14 ISO. Let's see this one, ISO 13485 internal auditor course. So, okay, this is the overview, but let's go to the curriculum. So we have an introduction based on the standards. The logic is the same for all standards. So we have here an introduction to the standards. So, okay, what is now here, for example, regarding, okay, you see the clauses of the standard. Then we have the part that is specific about the audits, like this one, organizing the internal audits, like internal audit procedure, program, audit plan for an individual audit. And yeah, so this just show you that this is an accredited, ASIC accredited course, okay? And you can check here, so yeah, a leading globally recognized quality standard in internal education. You can see here, you can see here the instructors. Yeah, so you can see the details of the courses here. So I leave here the link for that, and let's go back to the webinar. Okay, or to the slides. All right. So yeah, now qualification. You are a qualified auditor. Okay. Now let's go to the life cycle of the audit. Okay. So now it's like in the athletics, the relay. Okay, you receive the button. Okay. They provide you the button. The button says, okay, the assignment. Auditors, remember that auditors don't do audits because they want or because they like it. No, they receive an assignment that includes 3 essential sources of information. So auditors go into reality, and the scope of the audit, so audit scope sets the borders of that reality, and they collect audit evidence and compare audit evidence with audit criteria. This is important. This is very important. Auditors should not use their personal standards or opinions as benchmarks, as audit criteria. Auditors are not consultants, okay? Auditors should use as reference a known and agreed document, a procedure, a work instruction, a piece of legislation, a specification, or a standard, okay? And from that comparison, audit evidence with audit criteria, they develop the audit findings. Okay, audit findings indicate conformity or non-conformity. So when auditors collect all audit findings, let's use this mathematical symbol. When they collect all audit findings and compare what they see, so it's more like what emerges, that picture, with the audit objective or audit objectives, they can develop the audit conclusion. Okay. Everything an auditor does is to gather objective information to report a reliable audit conclusion. Okay, so now we received several questions about virtual and remote audits. Perhaps this can be useful for you. So please consider these links, okay, an article and a free webinar on demand. So I leave here the links. We also received questions about what a second-party audit is. So when you audit suppliers, and what is a vertical audit. So I leave here also the links for the article first, second, and third-party audits. What are the differences? And ISO 9001 horizontal audit versus vertical audit. Okay. Now, so audit vocabulary. Now let's go to the assignment. So when we receive the assignment, so when internal auditors receive their assignment, they are informed of the audit team composition and who the lead auditor is. Okay. They are informed about the borders, okay, the parts of the management system that are to be audited. They are informed about the audit criteria to be used, okay, and they are informed about the audit objectives, so the purpose of the audit. And I dare say that most companies don't think about audit objectives properly, okay? They just copy what they see certification body auditors doing. Audit objectives should follow the life cycle of your management system. So when you start your first internal audits, you may focus your attention on the design. So is the system well designed? Is the system designed according to the requirements of the standards or the regulation? Then you want to be sure later, you want to be sure that it is in place. So you audit conformity. Is it followed? Is it implemented? Oh, in paper or on the screen, you have a fantastic management system, but no one cares about it. No one follows. Okay, that's the one. And when you're sure that the system is implemented, you can start focusing your attention more and more on auditing effectiveness. Okay, so So are objectives being achieved? Are management system objectives being achieved? Because think with me, what does it matter to be very honest, so to comply with procedures, if it doesn't help the organization to achieve its objectives? It's like, that movie where the musicians are playing the music as the ship sinks. Okay. Now, Mlati asked, when conducting an ISO 13485 internal audit, how do you measure the effectiveness of the procedures that are implemented? Okay, to measure the effectiveness of the procedures during an internal audit, check against intended outcomes. So confirm if the procedure achieves what it was designed to. So like product conformity, regulatory compliance, risk control. Review performance indicators, so evaluate if relevant KPIs or quality objectives are being met, quality or environmental or information security are being met. Trace inputs to outputs, verify that the required inputs produce compliant control outputs consistently. Yeah, and look for deviations, okay, rework or frequent corrections that suggest the procedure is not effective, okay? Now, so you receive the assignment, and now you are preparing a checklist. Okay. Although ISO 9001, for example, or the management system standard don't mention checklists, and ISO 1911 considers not mandatory, but I believe that checklist should be mandatory. Okay. Now, let's see how I prepare a checklist. It's like distilling the requirements. So at the end of the audit, you want to provide a solid audit conclusion that answers the implicit questions within the audit objectives. Okay, so I like to look into an audit objective or objectives and translate, even mentally, that into a set of questions. Okay, at the end, I want to be able to answer to those questions. So guided by the audit objectives, because different objectives imply different lines of investigation. So if I'm auditing conformity, my questions are different than those if I'm auditing effectiveness. Okay, so so guided by the audit objectives, you need to study the audit criteria to start listing what you want to see, what you want to check, and whom you need to interview to collect audit evidence that supports raising your audit findings. So let me show you my technique using clause 7.2 from ISO 9001. Okay, this is my way, okay? I don't pretend that it is the best way or the only way. It's just my way, okay? So in my approach, I read the clause, the audit criteria, and I highlight relevant verbs, okay? Because verbs are action. In this slide, they are in yellow, okay? Then I highlight what is changed or act by those relevant verbs, okay? In this figure, it's in green, okay? And then I highlight the mandatory documents or records, okay? And you can follow the same approach to study legislation and internal procedures, okay? So this exercise helps me interpret, okay, the purpose behind the requirement. What is it trying to achieve? What risk is it trying to control? So when I say distilling requirements, what I underlined was determine necessary competence, ensure persons are competent, take actions to acquire the necessary competence. So we can translate this into this, okay, to this list of requirements. So now I translate those topics into who, why, when, what, and how questions. Okay, these questions make the auditee speak, and you learn much more when you listen. Okay, so don't forget to ask for evidence. So when you ask questions starting with who, why, what, how, auditors speak much more. Auditees speak much more than auditors. Okay, and when that happens, auditors learn much more. Okay, so About these questions, the questions in the checklist are for you, the auditor, not for the auditee, okay? So you don't, during the audit, you don't ask the exact questions in the checklist. You must tailor them to each auditee during the audit. So while auditors can use the questions in the checklist as a guide during the audit, so it is not necessary or recommended to repeat the exact questions to auditees, okay? So the questions in the checklist are written before the audit. And most of the time, they will be read and used during the audit and after learning things from previous observations and interviews. So this knowledge should not be forgotten and should be used to complement the type of questions recorded in the checklist. So for example, the question is, who can perform this job? But you arrive, for example, you arrive at human resources, and before you were at the R&D department and you spoke with Mary, okay? And now you can ask, why Mary can perform this job? So you can use that information, okay? Oh, while at Department A, I saw this and this and this. How can this relate with this requirement? Okay, so that's why I always say beware of using cookie cutter checklists, okay? Different audit objectives require different lines of inquiry, different questions, and different evidence to be collected, okay? So I find it useful to include tables in my checklists, okay? The number of rows is the number of samples I want to take during the audit. So remember, you want to write solid audit conclusions, okay? You want to be a trusted auditor. So there are internal auditors that see doing the job of doing internal audits as a punishment, okay? But there are others that see it as a way of growing. And for those that see it as a way of growing and want to be better and better auditors, so remember, it's important that people trust in your audit conclusions. So, because you want to be a trusted auditor. So, beware of the size of your sample. How many people from different jobs and how many actions will you check to conclude about competence status in the organization? Most likely, the population you are auditing is not homogeneous, but rather heterogeneous, composed of different segments or strata. So in this case, when facing an heterogeneous population, auditors should seek to collect a representative sample of the population, taking into account this heterogeneity, okay? So working with a checklist gives me the freedom to focus on one topic, abstract myself from other topics, and go as deep as I want, okay? When I finish a line of research, okay, it's easy for me to jump to another topic, okay, a different anchor, okay? Each topic or each question is around a different anchor. So the checklist is like, you know, the astronaut's umbilical cord. It gives me the freedom to investigate, knowing that I can always return to a point where I recover the ability to control the sequence of the audit, okay? Now, links. Please consider these links for your future reference. How to create a checklist for an ISO 13485 internal audit. How to create a checklist for an ISO 9001 internal audit. And the same for how to create a checklist for an ISO 14001. And how to create an ISO 9001 human resources audit checklist. Okay, I mentioned the standards, but if you work with 27001 and read something, these kind of articles for 9001, the requirements are the same, so they will be useful, okay? Or ISO 17025, it's the same, okay? So you prepare a checklist, okay? So after preparing the checklist, auditors know what they want to ask, okay, what they want to see, who they want to interview, and where they want to go. Now, they kind of develop a script, so an itinerary, a flow, or a sequence of interviews, which seems to be the best approach to gathering evidence and using it for the next interviews. So one more reason to customize checklists, okay? Now, they have an idea about the time needed for each interview because they know how many questions, what kind of questions, and what kind of evidence they want to see, and the time for audit team meetings. Okay, audit team meetings. This can be compiled in an audit plan, something like this. Okay. So an audit plan, a proposal the lead auditor sends to the auditees to get their approval. An audit agenda is a great communication and monitoring tool. Okay, useful for auditees so they can organize and plan their workday. Useful for auditors to compare real time with planned time and calibrate the pace of the audit. So essential for time management. Okay. Now, leave here links for future reference, creating an ISO 14001 internal audit plan, and how to create an ISO 45001 internal audit plan. Right. Now, just about the sequence. Okay, the sequence. When thinking about the best sequence for your audit, remember this. Look into this process map. Okay, so you are auditing today. And when you are auditing today, you can audit what is happening right now, and you can audit what already happened. However, you cannot audit what will happen tomorrow. So, for example, even if you are manufacturing a product today, that doesn't mean you will be able to deliver it in 1 month. So, also looking back allows you, the auditor, to supply the information about the samples to be audited. So let's look at the flow of the processes. So starting the audit on the process within a project doesn't provide an opportunity to trace evidence back, because I can pick a project that was not yet approved by the customer or is not yet finished, but while starting an audit at providing service allows to go back and audit everything from the commercial activity, from the design of the project, the commercial activity, design of the service, preparing the service, the other materials used, everything. So you can use information. So think about the sequence of the audit. Okay, I normally use that word of kind of an avalanche. While an audit, during an audit, the amount of information that you collect is a kind of an avalanche that you can use. You collect here and you can use it later. Okay. So, for example, provide service. You are auditing a service that was executed. Okay. And and you see the date. Okay, so this was done at the customer premises yesterday. And then when you are auditing and you audit the commercial, okay, you realize that the customer asked for that service to be done Monday, not on Wednesday. And then you ask for evidence that that change was communicated to the customer. There was customer accepted, and you can realize that no one communicated with the customer. For example, is this a good practice? So think about this sequence. Okay, that is so that is why when I think about the sequence of an audit, I always think about it's like writing the script of a play. Okay, I want the sequence of the audit to have meaning, not a random flow. Okay, I want to collect information relevant for what I'm going to do next. Okay, so be aware of the audit sequence. Now we will do the audit. We'll execute. We'll perform the audit. So during internal audits, not all organizations consider it necessary to have an opening meeting where the agenda is remembered and any last-minute change is agreed upon. My advice is do it, okay? It's very useful, or can be very useful, okay? Now comes what? Gathering evidence. So is the main purpose of performing an audit, gathering facts. The auditor wants to find evidence that helps him or her change the question, answer the question of the checklist. Okay. Consider the number of examples that you should check to be confident of your conclusions. Just because the first order audited at a delivery delay does not mean that all orders are delivered late. So yeah, use traceability to check the flow of things more naturally. Interviewing, okay, is a way of getting information from another person in response to the auditor questions. It is the most important form of data an auditor can gather in auditing. So you don't start right away with a battery of questions. Present yourself and put people at ease. Some may have never been audited. Some may be scared. Explain why you are doing the audit. Ask them things about what they are doing and rephrase their answers when you want to check you really understood their answer. Okay? Be polite. Be diplomatic. Ask to see the things. Remember, what people say are not facts, but pseudo-facts that must be corroborated. And in the end, explain your next step and say thank you. Okay? Remember, do not ask the question as it is exactly in the checklist. Try to connect with the auditee and adapt the question. Customize the question. And remember, elephants have memory. Auditors take notes. Okay? So I use codified symbols to remark things and different colors for different audit days. So when I'm checking my checklist, it's very easy or easier to collect information for the report. Be aware that there are different kinds of questions, okay? Open questions, probe, close, hypothetical. Also, avoid-oriented and multiple questions in a row, okay? Where you are kind of machine gunning the auditee. Be aware of perceptions, even honest perceptions that are a product of your experience and bias. Always remember the purpose of the audit and the fact that you have a reputation to keep. Are you interpreting facts correctly? Remember, auditors learn much more with what they hear than with what they ask. Okay, so listen. And beware of auditee statics to avoid answers, to forget to show records, to give excuses, very rational, okay, for something not according to plan. Interruptions, even threats. Oh, I could tell you some stories about threats. Okay, run away from showing feelings and emotions, okay? An auditor should act as rationally as possible. I like to say auditors should act like Mr. Spock, you know, from Star Trek, calm, rational, and logical. When we run away from that, we become easily locked, okay, in situations like this kind of mind games. You can find an auditee that, oh, I'm the poor victim, you know, my boss, you are my hero, and my boss is the villain. Okay, so be careful with that. So try to act as rational, logical. Okay, we perform the audit. What's the next step? Reporting the audit. So it's important that the content and conclusions of the audit report do not come as a surprise. So, for example, what do I mean with this is when doing an audit, if I see what seems to be a non-conformity, I say it right away. I say something like, I think we have here a non-conformity. So I give an opportunity for the auditee to contest, to provide more information, or to acknowledge, okay? Because when we arrive at the closing meeting and we present, or when we present the report, it's our first allies, okay? If the manager of the area or the managing director or the CEO hears a non-conformity, what? That person will be the first in the closing meeting, okay? And there is no more conversation, okay? So if the auditor finds negative findings, she should mention them during the audit, as I said, even to allow the auditee to demonstrate that the auditor is wrong. So this is an example of the kind of content here in the slide that an audit report can have. An introduction, why the audit was performed, the purpose, what was examined, the scope, what was used as a reference, the criteria, when was done, the date, and where sites it took place, can be departments, can be, okay, different sites, who participated, auditors and auditees, and the list of all auditees that you contacted during the audit, and the distribution list to whom the report will be distributed. Then we have the audit conclusions. Don't forget the purpose of the audit. The audit was performed to be able to meet the audit objectives based on audit evidence. After doing the audit, after considering and evaluating all the findings against the audit criteria, what do you as an auditor conclude? Then we have the list of findings and improvement opportunities. So, for example, I have here this example of a negative finding. A non-conformity can be something like this. So according to ISO 14001, 2015, clause 7.2, competent states be ensure that workers are competent. Okay, when reviewing competence records, human resources could not provide evidence that all new workers in areas considered critical by the company had system-related training. Okay, so now I put here workers F and G performing relevant activities in area 51 without evidence of effective training. Look, in the first sentence, I put here what I call the must. Okay, the must is the audit criteria. Then what was found. Okay, in this case, the negative thing. And then the proof. Okay, the proof that I'm not making things up. Anyone that goes looking after that proof will arrive at the same conclusion. Okay, so the audit report is the final product of your audit. Okay, everything will be condensed there, and after all emotions, work, interviews, and observations, it is the only thing that will remain for the future. So be careful with your own brand as an auditor and give attention to the audit report. Okay, I believe that the best practice is to write the report as soon as possible and put it to rest for 1 or 2 days. Then read it and review it. Writing a report as soon as possible is good for recording evidence that is still fresh in your mind, because we always forget to write everything in the notes. Okay, and then some rest time gives us distance to fine-tune what we want to say when we are our blood is cooler. Okay. So please consider these links for future reference. So what is the ISO 14001 Internal Audit Report and how to create it? The other article is Write a Good QMS Internal Audit Report and how to write a good ISO 9001 Audit Nonconformity. Okay, so classification on audit findings. So you get the audit findings when you compare audit evidence with the audit criteria. Audit findings may be negative and we have non-conformities, or maybe positive and we have conformities and perhaps best practices. You may also have opportunities for improvement. Attention, an opportunity for improvement is not a tiny non-conformity. It is presented as informational and no response is required. Okay, it is a suggestion based on the auditor's experience or perspective. Okay, it may be something related to inefficient practices or maybe something negative but unrelated to the audit scope or criteria. Okay, it is optional whether the auditees do something with it. Right? I don't use the word observation in my reports because if you look for an ISO definition of audit observation, you cannot find it. Okay. And so I don't use it. Some organizations classify nonconformities as major or minor. So major nonconformity is the failure to fulfill a requirement, or something like, okay, we don't have a procedure, we don't have a practice limit. We don't have a quality policy. Oh, but it's a requirement in the standard. Oh, but we don't have it. Okay, it's a major. Or yes, we have a procedure about how to do corrective actions, but we are not following it, or most of the time we don't follow it. Okay, it's this one, process procedure completely fallen apart. Or you have several minor nonconformities related to the same topic in different parts of the management system. Okay, and this makes, okay, so different, for example, different obsolete procedures are in use in different parts of the company. So see, this document control is not working. So all nonconformities require a correction, the elimination of the nonconformity. So in this case, it would be train workers F and G according to the competence requirements in their job description. Major nonconformities also require corrective action. So what is so wrong in our system that workers can start working without the necessary training? So first, find the root cause, find the why, then eliminate the root cause. Okay, so I leave here the links for two articles. Using internal audits to drive real improvement in ISO 14001 and major versus minor nonconformities in the certification audit. Okay. So now, following up, the internal audit process doesn't end with the audit report. Following up on a previous audit is a crucial step to ensure that negative findings were the target of work and that work was effective, showing that the organization is moving, is progressing toward improvement. So the follow-up confirms that a correction was made, the non-conformity was eliminated, and corrective action was initiated, but the real corrective action focused on root causes, and the corrective action was implemented on time and was effective. Following up on the program involves looking into the whole set of audits included and taking a big picture. So something like, what have we, after doing all the audits in the program, what have we learned about our organization? What kind of value did audits add to the organization? What was okay? What was not okay? What needs to be changed in the next year program? Okay. Right. So, okay. So based on emails received before this webinar, these are the main challenges regarding how to perform an ISO internal audit. So presented from the higher to the lowest frequency. So auditor independence and impartiality. I will show you I will answer during the Q&A to questions regarding this topic. Preparing a checklist, preparing an audit program, preparing an audit report, and preparing people for the audit. And I will also answer questions during the Q&A regarding the audit report and preparing people for the audit. So we received more than about around 50 questions, okay? So there was a long tail of topics not mentioned here, but I tried to answer as much as possible to all questions. So, conclusion. Internal audits can be a powerful tool to monitor conformance to management system criteria and to verify effectiveness, and to learn how you can use 𝗪𝗲𝗏's internal auditor courses. So here's the link with more details. I'll also send you now the meeting link to schedule a call with our experts. They can explain you how these courses work or how our toolkit works and show you any document you'd like to see. For example, we have a toolkit just for internal audits, okay? Right, so Q&A. Okay, all right, so 8 minutes late. Okay, on each of our standards, there is an internal audit toolkit. We will send you links for them later. You can search, preview, and also buy each document separately. Now, before we begin with question and answer, just to mention that you can also ask me anything about audits directly. Just send me an email and I'll answer as quick as I can, okay? So if you have to leave before this Q&A session is over, please do fill in the short survey that will open right after you leave the webinar. So let's see. So we have a question from Susie. Susie, my organization is ready for accreditation. There is only 4 employees, including myself. Can I carry out the internal audits? Okay, Susie, I will answer your question at the same time I'm answering 2 questions received before the webinar. So 𝗵𝗵𝗶𝘀 asked, small organization with only 1 certified auditor. How can we avoid a conflict of interest in an internal audit without hiring an external party for it? My answer is, I strongly recommend hiring an external auditor to avoid a conflict of interest. If not possible, I invite you to contact your certification body and check with them what precautions and evidence they expect to see to demonstrate impartiality and objectivity. Yes, I know the trend with ISO is to allow for this to happen, but many auditors many certification body auditors will not accept. So contact your certification body. It's the best approach. So McCullough asks how to ensure impartiality of auditors. So the best is avoid auditing your own work. Never audit areas where the auditor is responsible for outcomes or decisions. Okay. Now, other ways is define audit roles clearly, assign audit responsibilities in advance, ensuring separation of duties, use audit criteria and checklists, rely on objective evidence, not opinions, Use peer observation or review. So have a colleague review the audit plan, the findings or report. Rotate the audit assignment. So if possible, vary who audits what to prevent bias over time. Declare any conflict of interest. So formally ask the auditor to declare any potential bias before each audit. Follow the audit procedures. Okay, so apply your documented internal audit procedures strictly to all audits. Okay. One more is Loden asked, I know that ISO 1911 guidelines for auditing item 4E states that for small organizations, it may not be possible for internal auditors to be fully independent of the activity being audited. But every effort should be made to remove bias and encourage objectivity. It's what's in the standard. That said, at what point in the number of employees do we need to have more than one internal auditor before getting written up for not having enough internal auditors? Well, there are no explicit rules in ISO 1911 or 9001 that define a minimum number of internal auditors based on the number of employees. Okay. My experience is certification bodies will raise non-conformities if they find that an auditor audited his or her own work. So be careful, contact them in advance and explain the situation on what do they require to show for you to evidence, to demonstrate this impartiality and objectivity. Okay. Steve asked, we audit against ISO 22301. We break up the clauses into 6 monthly audits. Firstly, clauses 4 to 7 plus 9 and 10. Then secondly, clause 8. Would be the best doing just one full internal audit per year. So as I said, Steve, if you have in your company people or auditors, internal auditors with experience that can do everything in one internal audit, you can do it. Okay. My advice would be have a full internal audit per year plus 1 or 2 or 3 very small audits just focused on the areas of the company with more non-conformities or with more risks. Okay. Question from Malcolm. Is it the purpose of the auditor to control the corrective action process? Well, that will depend on your organization procedure, okay, or practice, or what is in the procedure. Some companies do it. So some companies require the internal auditor to approve the correction and the corrective action. Some, I believe that most, according to my experience, this is a good practice. Okay. I believe that most of the companies, what they do is the responsible of the system manager is the one that will control that. Okay. But yeah, for the internal auditor to do that, no, yeah, it's a good practice. Thank you, Karabo. Okay. Kyle asked, is it more beneficial to complete a lead auditor course rather than internal? It's not. It's two different things. Okay. So if you want to, if you need to do internal audits, start with the internal auditor course. Okay. If you want to do, if you want to work for a certification, if you have experience doing internal audits, you want to work for a certification body, you want to do external audits, or you want to do internal audits as an external auditor, then in that case, you should do the lead auditor. My experience is first do the internal auditor course and later the lead auditor after you have experience. Okay. Nancy asked, how do you decide on the scoring criteria of an internal audit? based upon number of major, minor, and opportunities for improvement. So I personally, I don't do any more scoring than that. So I classify so in the report I put there what is conformities. So when I do certification audits, I don't write conformities. But when I'm doing internal audits, I write conformities, I write non-conformities and opportunities for improvement. Because sometimes I audit organizations that are very disciplined, they follow the procedures, and they don't, I find 1, 2, 0 non-conformities, okay? And I don't want that later a certification body auditor come and say, oh, this auditor, this Carlos was asleep, didn't find anything. No, so I want to put there all conformities to show that I did my work, okay? That I was diligent. So I don't use any more scoring, okay? Jonathan asked, my organization is a startup and looking into getting ISO 9001 certified. I'm certified by a body already. Any suggestions on where to start for a new company? There's 12 of us and we are all scattered around the world. I'm the only employee in the warehouse. So you are a certified auditor. So what I would recommend you for this is, so you know the standard, you know good auditing practices. You can start by training your colleagues, okay? Training in ISO 9001 requirements, and then training 1 or 2 or auditors so they can do audits. And you can use remote audits. You can do the remote audits, okay? So Wei Tai asks, how much time does the organization have to make corrections after the internal audit? Does the internal auditor make a follow-up report? So that amount of time, that will depend on which organizations. I know organizations that have a rule that the auditor should answer. The auditor should write a report in maximum 5 days, okay? And the responsible of the area with non-conformities also have 5 days to present an answer. The answer is not an answer saying it's done. No, the answer is something like, we intend to do this, okay? Of course, if there is something that requires going after the root cause, it may take more time. So does the internal auditor make a follow-up report? Normally, what I see companies doing is that, so if there is a non-conformity, they write the non-conformity in the corrective action form or audit non-conformity form, and so it's there that the follow-up is recorded, okay? If what is the correction, what is the root cause, what is the corrective action, was it implemented, was it effective, it's there. Nafisa asked, thanks. So for ISO 17025, how much certified internal auditor should my quality management system have? So if possible, at least 2, okay, to be sure that there's always someone that no one is auditing their own work, okay? If that's impossible, contact your certification body or your accreditation body. Carabo asks, should an organization take opportunity for improvement as minor findings to improve their management system? No, okay? So an opportunity for improvement is a suggestion. What I'm going to say is really true. In my audit reports, when I'm writing an opportunity for improvement, the text that starts always like this. The audit team invites the organization to, so I'm inviting the organization to consider that information that is following, because it's up to them to decide what to do. If I consider that as a minor finding, okay, then it's a minor finding. Then it's a non-conformity, minor non-conformity. But an opportunity for improvement is an invitation. It's not mandatory. Okay, that's why sometimes I see organizations or auditors that use observation. They write observation as a kind of minor non-conformity. Okay, that's for me. I think that's wrong. Non-conformity or conformity. Okay, if it's non-conformity, is a non-conformity. Period. Okay, and so opportunity for improvement is an invitation. That's how I use it. Okay. Now. Okay, so Christine, what if you are the single and only Q&A person for your organization? I think I already answered that. Yeah. Okay. Now, Sharing asked how to determine the granularity of a risk assessment considering my organization. How to determine the granularity of a risk assessment considering the organization aiming for certification is a small medium enterprise with 20 employees. Oh, it's up to your organization you are the best people to define that granularity. Okay, because you are in that organization every day. You know the regulation, you know the customer requirements. So it's up to you to determine that. Okay. So Hans asked, we are a large software development company with certifications in QMS, ISMS, and SMS. We have a team of quality folks with various levels of experience, but all have done at least one internal audit. Should we plan internal audits at the same time since there exists a great deal of overlapping clauses between the three standards, or do you recommend separating internal audits by standard? Oh, I have a slide about that, but the simple question is I recommend as possible to do integrated audit. Okay, whenever possible to do that integrated, because it's when you're doing your work, you are not with, oh, now I'm using the quality hat, oh, now I'm using the ISMS hat. No, you do your job, and while doing your job you have to consider all these different requirements. But I will let me show you now some questions that I have here from other that I received before this webinar. So let me see here, this one. So Guillaume asked how to ask the right useful question in an internal audit. So as an internal auditor, asking the right questions is a core skill. So you don't ask questions just to pass the time or out of curiosity. We ask with a clear purpose to gather evidence that allows us to evaluate the management system against the audit objectives. So start with the audit objective in mind. Okay. Ask open-ended questions to promote explanation. So can you walk me through how this process works? What do you do when? How do you ensure that? Then link your questions to specific clauses or requirements. So how is this documented? What records are kept to show this step was completed? How do you know the equipment is properly calibrated? Dig deeper when needed, respectfully. So don't stop at the first answer. And I believe junior auditors do that a lot. Okay. So you mentioned X. Can you show me how that's recorded? Or what happens if the result is not acceptable? And adapt to the process and to the person. So be clear, professional, and avoid technical jargon when necessary. Show respect for the auditor's role and knowledge. Okay. Now, next one. Gomez asked, how do you audit the interaction of processes? So start with the process map or description of the QMS. So identify the core processes and supporting processes. Look at documented interactions and ask, can you show me how your process connects to the one before and after? So follow the flow of information or material. So trace a real example through multiple processes. So for example, from delivery to production to order intake. So yeah, how do you ensure that the handover between departments is correct? What happens if a process output is delayed or non-conforming? Now, then verify controls at interfaces. So are there clear responsibilities? Are issues at interfaces monitored? So who is responsible for reviewing the output before passing it on? Is there a record of acceptance or review between stages? Check communication and feedback loops. Assess if communication flows across processes. Yeah. So you can ask things like, do you receive feedback on how your outputs are used? And look at monitoring, measurement, and improvement across processes. So for example, is this KPI affected by inputs from other processes? Have you had any improvement actions involving more than one department? So yeah, things, this kind of questions. And the last slide is this one. Glenard asked, is it possible to provide insight into an integrated management system internal audit? Now, an integrated management system assesses how the organization's processes conform to multiple standards simultaneously instead of auditing each system separately. So it focuses on shared processes, common controls, and interactions across systems. So objectives: verify conformity to each applicable standard, assess integration of systems, identify system-level risks and opportunities, ensure efficiency in process management and resource use. So kind of, you need to consider this, okay? Now, audit business processes, like, for example, procurement, production, human resources, rather than clauses, okay? So evaluate how these processes meet quality, environmental, and safety requirements, for example. So in your case would be, when auditing procurement, check supplier selection criteria, check environmental impact of materials, check contractor safety and compliance, check contractor and intellectual property ownership arrangements. So you are auditing one department or one process, procurement, and you're looking into clauses regarding 9001, 14001, 45001, 27001. Consider context and interested parties, okay? Assess whether the organization has a unified understanding of context, needs and expectations, risks and opportunities. Leadership and planning, okay? Audit how top management demonstrates integrated leadership. Is there a single policy covering quality, environment, safety, ISMS? Are objectives aligned and monitored together? Support processes, okay? So verify harmonization, so one document control process, share a training matrix covering all systems, common communication channels, and perform evaluation and improvement. So check that audits, non-conformities, KPIs, and management reviews are combined where possible. Yeah, improvement actions address multiple systems. Yeah, so yeah, my approach. So Surtina asked, what do you think of self-assessment when business will receive specific template to consolidate their... What do you think of self-assessment where business will receive specific template to consolidate their data reference to the audit checklist? Then you'll sample the data as part of internal audit. Think, let me see here. Let's go back here if I have something that can help. No. Okay. I need to reflect more on this question, Sortina. I will send you an email. Okay. Now let me see what more. Raja Lakshmi, my organization is small and there's only one person to handle the compliance enablement and also maintain policies and procedures of ISO office and do the internal audit as well. will this cause an issue of impartiality or conflict of interest? Okay, I already answered that. So let's, yeah, better contact your certification body, ask them their what they expect in a situation like this. Okay. So wait, I asked, does the internal auditor follow up on findings from internal audit? Our internal auditor did not contact our lab after 4 months. Can we approve the corrections of our lab ourselves? Well, that will depend on what your procedure says. So if you require that it's the internal auditor that needs to approve to do the follow-up, you need to contact the internal auditor. Okay, so what in my experience is organizations normally don't do that, because organizations that use an external auditor to do internal audits, okay, that auditor comes, does the audit, they pay him or her, and that's it. Okay. If we need the auditor to come back again to close or to do the follow-up, that will be more costly. So normally organizations don't do that. So see what's in your procedure, adapt your procedure to your reality. It's up to you, to your organization, okay, to do that. Okay. Yes, this is applicable to food industry. Yeah. Question from 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝗀𝗶. Okay, yeah. So just one more question that I have here, 1 or 2 more questions before, because we are, yeah, it's 𝗂𝗲𝗶𝗀𝗀 asked, how do you ensure staff understand and stay committed to the process without policing them to compliance, avoiding last-minute rushes to ensure all is in place for audits? Okay, so build processes that are clear, useful, and owned by those who use them. So train for understanding, not just compliance. Embed checks into daily work, not as audit preparation. Use visible metrics and leadership follow-up to keep focus. Make quality a habit, not a reaction. 2 last questions. They are together. Negroni asked how to engage all departments in the internal audit, and Binti, so Sultina Binti, asked how to explain the internal audit to auditees about the process, about what the impact, what the benefits. So set the tone that internal audits are tools for improvement, not policing. Okay, show examples. Okay, or show by example. Involve departments in planning, align audit focus in their goals and risks, and use process-based questions relevant to their work. Okay, share findings constructively and recognize good practices. And when people see audits as valuable, fair, and actionable, engagement follows naturally. Okay, so I have your questions. One last question from Aris, linking ISO audits and the launching a new ERP system. I will send you an email with the answer to that question. Okay, so because we are already 14 minutes past the hour. Okay, so our time is up. Okay, I'm sorry there was no time to answer all of your questions. But the purpose of this webinar was to give you a general overview of the internal audits, not to go into a detailed question or to detailed discussion. So if you have any questions regarding this, because people are asking to a replay, I don't know if they are joking or a compliment or it's true, but if you have questions regarding internal audits, please send it to me. Send to 𝗪𝗲𝗲𝗏, they will send to me and I will answer, and you don't have to pay nothing for that. Okay. So thank you. So Finally, if you join this webinar through Zoom, you'll see a short survey. So I would kindly ask you to spend a minute to fill it in. The recording of this presentation will be available in a few hours. You will receive a link to the recording. So if you join the webinar through LinkedIn and YouTube, you will receive a link to the short survey now, and the link to the presentation will be posted on our event page in a few minutes. That will be all. Thank you for your participation. This is one of the webinars that I like the most because there are a lot of questions, and I hope you enjoyed this webinar. Okay, have a nice day.